Hello, welcome to my 60 to 70 Mage spec guide. Basically, I'll be talking about the talent builds that you want to be running while leveling in Dragonflight, as well as what you're going to choose as you level up for each of the specs. And I'm going to cover, a bit of their strengths and weaknesses for leveling. I'll tell you right now, Arcane's my recommendation. It does a bunch of damage, but Frost especially is a very strong contender for that as well. And leveling itself, as you'll see in like the videos I'm going to show you, isn't crazy challenging, so you can still play fire if you really like fire, and I'll give you an opportunity to play some more unique builds while leveling. You can skip to whatever you're looking for at the timeline below. Thanks for watching. For this build, we're really trying to make fire into a more consistent damage class because its traditional damage profile is horrible for leveling. Having all your damage concentrated in combustion when most mobs die in like 3 seconds is not very useful. So we're going to be taking Tempered Flames, Pyroclasm, and SKB just to beef up that consistent damage, and then also you'll be starting off going down towards Hyperthermia just for even more of a kind of consistent barrage of Pyroblast that can randomly help you just take down enemies. This does not have great AoE. Nothing you could really do for fire is great AoE. You could just sink one of your points into Flame Strike here, and then once you get Hyperthermia, you would have decent AoE pumping Flame Strikes, but even that would be pretty bad compared to fire and frost. So the way that you would play this build is you just press in Pyroblast as your filler instead of Fireball. That's how you play Tempered Flames. And then as for the class tree, this is going to be very similar across all the specs. I went with more survivability options. If you're solo playing, you're going to be potentially getting hit a lot, but also, again, keeping with that consistent damage mantra. So we're taking Encounter's Flow, and then also Time Anomaly. You won't get much value out of Rune of Power with how fast mobs die. It's definitely, if you want to play Rune of Power to get used to it at max level, you can play Rune of Power. Rune of Power is the only viable thing at max level. So as for Time Anomaly versus Time Warp or Temporal Warp, either one, Time Anomaly is just going to help you a little bit more randomly throughout the packs, and if you are encountering a lot of large enemies, which I wasn't really, you can take Temporal Warp. Temporal Warp technically gains more value because Time Anomaly can't proc outside combat. But so as you'll see, I'll mainly be using Pyroblast as my filler, taking advantage of Firestarter for those free kit crits when I open up on new mobs. This does have pretty bad AoE, but your Alexstrasza's Fury alleviates that a little bit because you can use Phoenix Flames just to do a bunch of AoE damage and have it crit, be a guaranteed crit. Doesn't matter here because things die very fast. But take notice that my Pyroblast are hitting about 10k when they crit. My Arcane Blast, for instance, at 4 charges hit for 22k. For Frost, you'll be getting your second point of Hailstones at level 61, and then moving over to Freezing Rain, then down through Snap Freeze to Freezing Winds, and then towards Slick Ice. Nothing much to say here. I'll have more to talk about in terms of like a rotational section instead of over the build. Our general tree looks very similar again because we're still going for a flat damage profile. The main difference here is we're making sure both to pick up Ice Nova and Temporal Manipulation. Ice Nova in the middle of the tree and Temporal Manipulation near the bottom. Ice Nova is a very strong spell for Frost and AoE, so this just lets you use it very consistently. Still have a bunch of survivability traits, and you can take Rune of Power if you want. That's going to be the only play at max level, but Encounter's Flow is just, I found it better when leveling. The rest of the points you put in your general tree don't matter at all. Put them wherever you like. You can change them at max level for throughput, which is mainly going to be Shifting Power or Meteor. One of the problems for Frost leveling in past expansions has been you need to generate your procs with Frostbolt, so you'll end up in this strange situation where you're just Frostbolting someone 3 to 4 times before you actually get a proc so you can do enough damage to kill them. That was Frost's main weakness for leveling in past expansions, and that no longer exists because now Flurry is on a charge-based system, so you have on-demand opener damage. Frost's main thing that excels at is pulling and kiting a lot of mobs. It does have really good consistent damage, and yeah, it's just Arcane does a bit better burst, and it has short cooldowns, which enable you to maximize your downtime by getting your cooldowns back. So that's the main reason where Frost falls a little bit short of Arcane, because Arcane doesn't need to do this 3-button combo to kill things like Frost with Frostbolt into Flurry into Ice Lance. It can just press Arcane Blast and do all that damage that Frost just did in 3 buttons and won. So for Arcane and the talent tree, the main important things you're going to know is that you have Siphon Storm, which basically just turns Evocate into a damage cooldown. It's like a Font of Power. You just channel it when running between packs. You don't really need that much mana regen, so you don't need to use Evocate for mana regen because we have Arcane Familiar and we have Enlightened, so you do have a lot of passive mana regen, or just a lot of mana in general, that with mobs dying so quickly, you'll regen most of it just running to the next one. You can see here I marked down the path you're going to go for leveling as taking Echo, then the clear casting talents down to Harmony. If you want, you can forgo Arcane Echo and go for Harmonic Echo right below Radiant Spark. It really doesn't matter. Harmonic Echo below Radiant Spark is probably a better choice because you'll be using that a lot more consistently than Touch of the Magi, at least what I found when leveling. And Arcane Echo is really, a lot of its strength kind of comes from Nether Tempest, which we're not taking. So yeah, it would honestly probably be better to move that point down there. But the other thing you're going to want to look out for is Arcane Bombardment. You're really going to want to be setting off your barrage when enemies are below 35% health while leveling, because it will probably just insta-kill them. But I won't get too used to that because it will, the rotation will be different at level 70. So, and then same deal for the general tree, taking Time Anomaly and Encounters of Blow. Time Anomaly is a little bit more important here just because of how much mana Arcane Surge can give back to you if it procs, but you can still play with whatever you want. When leveling, you should just go for Shifting Power or Displacement if you'd prefer a little bit more movement, since there's a lot of movement while questing, but Shifting Power will be what you're playing with at max level, so it's best to get used to it now. But yeah, really not much to say here. You can see the main benefit to Arcane is that its 4-stack Arcane Blast hit about twice as hard as a Power Blast. If you were noticing earlier, my Power Blast hit about 10k. My 4-stack Arcane Blast, when they crit, hit about 22k. This is at, around level 61. And that's all you really need to know. It's just Arcane hits that much harder with just a filler spell. And it has great AoE because it has 2 orb charges, and mana's not really a concern while leveling because you're running, Evocate with Siphon Storm, you have Arcane Familiar for the increased mana, you have Enlightened for the mana regen, you can Arcane Surge as a pseudo Evocate whenever you want because its damage doesn't really matter compared to your super high damage you already have. Of course, it will matter a lot more at max level, but yeah. Arcane is really what I'd recommend to level with. You also have the increased movement speed from Chrono Shift. You have 3 invises if you're leveling in War mode. It's honestly a little crazy for leveling, so I'd highly recommend it. Alright, that is going to be all for this video. I will be streaming my leveling on my Twitch channel, which I'll link in the pinned comment, I guess, just twitch.tv/ManatherMage, and probably also streaming a lot throughout the week just because it's Dragonflight launch. And then I'll also, once Raid starts, get back into my stream schedule of streaming Tuesday, Thursdays for my raids at the minimum if you want to check those out. So thanks for watching. Leave any questions, comments down below. Leveling does have a lot of flexible builds. It really doesn't matter. You can adapt them to whatever you want, but these will be pretty strong for you, and I found them to work quite well for me when I've been leveling.